Hey, good evening, guys. Ken at Tortoise Capital, November 24th, 2025, coaching session, cohort 5, Monday night. Hey, I just want to draw your attention to the session I did yesterday with Chi Wing and Hamad. The opening 20 or 30 minutes were really powerful. I was describing some advances I made in AI strategy prompting. I created a thing called Pen 3.0 Prompt Engineering Navigator, which I think I'd sent to you guys, but I'll make sure I send it again tonight. It's a general purpose best practices prompt engineering guide. What it does is it's a persona, it's an agent itself who has expertise in 35 world class prompt engineering techniques as of like November 15th, the 35 best ideas. Plus, I added 3 ideas to it that are not on the list of world best practices, but which ought to be. The 3 things I added included the ability to do an after action review after every work session that you do with it. So it will interrogate you and check itself to see if there were any new ideas that look like world class ideas as a consequence of you working back and forth with the AI through whatever work project you're doing. So it's keeping track of its own process and your process while it's doing work. And then the after action review remembers to investigate that process to see if there's something worth doing. And then if it does that, it has a module that will write the new idea as a new block of code and then add it to the set of 35 existing best practices and then give you an updated code deck. And that way you get after action review plus continuous learning all in one. And it writes those as an abbreviated um, prompt and as a unabbreviated prompt. The abbreviated prompt is ideal for taking that prompt and dropping it into the custom window or custom report window in Notebook LM. And that's powerful because Notebook LM is now incorporating Gemini 3.0, which was just released this week and is the leading commercial um, large language model. So what you get is the 350 million words of the curated content in our little notebook, plus the world's best large language model that can run a custom report, which is optimized for you by the use of this Pen 3 prompt engineer. The custom report window is limited to 5,000 characters, and some of the workflow that the Pen 3.0 will produce is larger than 5,000 words. I have it produce both unconstrained and constrained versions because the unconstrained version someday will be small enough to fit into whatever the current AI is using. So you'd like to have the unconstrained version. But the constrained version scrunches it down to about 3% of the file size without losing any of the actionable processes. So it gives you kind of an expedient current use, but it also preserves the larger prompt for use. Now you can actually, depending on what AI you're using, you can actually load that file as a reference document and just run the whole script that's in there. But the real power of Notebook LM is the fact that it's linking up Gemini 3.0 and all of those curated reference sources. And it's really hard to argue with the custom report generator. Now, they've added recently a number of configured reports already. So it's already pre-formatted for things like cognitive map, strategic overview, white paper, executive summary, flashcards, quiz, audio podcast summary, video briefing, and all those are really good. We use that output of those standard reports when we are crafting curriculum for our Army leaders in my college, and they're pretty good. But the custom report window is just so much better, you can't even stand it. In fact, if you take that same 5,000 character prompt and you just drop it into the regular chat window in Notebook, it does a pretty good job. It will compute for about 5 seconds and give you a really good answer. But if you drop it into the custom report, that thing can work 10, 15 minutes and produce a 40 or 50 page booklet that is top shelf right out the gate. So um, it's worth listening to the first 20 minutes of Sunday's briefing. I'm going to do it as a separate lesson because it's pretty good. It's the same briefing that I gave a bunch of generals uh, late last week that were all in town. The Army's gone through a series of headquarters reorganizations, and they've consolidated the innovation and transformation function into a single headquarters that's also responsible for training and professional development. So they brought all those generals into our building to try to figure out what the fuck they're supposed to be doing. A couple of those generals are former students of mine, and I had a chance to talk with them and show this little Pen 3.0 prompt engineer, and they're all taking it back with them to their staff to implement it at their headquarters because their job basically fell off when they saw what it could do. So I'm pretty happy with the way that thing is working. Just this week, I used it to write a 10-week course for Army professional logisticians, a business plan for a friend of mine who's trying to do a side hustle and turn it into something lucrative, a cognitive map of all the research material for Professor Angus Fletcher out of Ohio State. And the beauty of it is skilled in asking you the questions of what work you want done. And then by the way you answer those questions, it will pick which of those modules for best practices that are appropriate for the kind of problem that you're trying to solve. So this is the current best strategy for the use of AI in the workplace, which is start with the work that you want to do, model the process, and then ask AI where it can use its strength to improve your workflow, as opposed to stop what you're doing, go learn a bunch of AI, and then try to imagine how you can use it. This one, you bring the AI to the workplace and then work as its partner as you go. The beauty of that, by the way, is that through the dialogue of question and answer with the AI, you're actually becoming educated in the process of modern prompt engineering. And I think it's really powerful for that reason. Our Army Center for Lessons Learned sent me a note this morning and said, "Hey, could you come over and teach us how to do prompt engineering? We would like to have a course on that so that we could have our analysts query the Army's repository of lessons learned over the last 100 years." And I said, "Well, I could do that, but what you ought to do is simply run this Pen 3.0 because it will help you write the reports that you want written, and it has the ability to do education on demand as you go. So if it asks you a question and you don't know why it asked that question, it'll tell you why that's a good question and how it's going to use that to shape your choices." And finally, the thing that it does is that as you start answering questions and it gets an understanding of the work project that you're doing, it will start to ask you questions about strategy and choice points. Like when I was writing the curriculum piece, it asked me, is this for an individual standalone home study course, or is this something that you're going to have an instructor facilitate in small groups inside a classroom? Because how it would write the curriculum would change as a function of the method of delivery. So it was smart enough to be able to ask me those kinds of shaping questions, which give you a deeper insight into the work project that you're proposing, sometimes without you even being aware of it as a choice point. Like it's actually adding value in the way that it answers or asks questions. Um, Bob Rourke's been using that to, he created a visual report interpreter. He basically took the last 5 weeks of the weekend report, stacked those together, and asked it to figure out a trading plan based on deep understanding of the underlying market structure. And that thing is unbelievably good. Like it's finding out where the internals of the market were decaying over the last 3 weeks and where the weakness was likely to occur, and what were the opportunities on the long side and the short side. I used that on Friday and I used that today to make a killing in both directions of the market. So um, the final thing I'd say there is that the Gemini 3.0 now includes Nano Banana Pro, which is a visual generative engine, also just came out this week. And instead of it being just a language model that tries to interpret text, it actually has a three-dimensional space sense and can construct visual objects in space and manipulate those in the same way that language models manipulate words. So it can actually do page layouts and all that jazz, but it shows that it can also understand the movement of price through time and make judgments about that in an intelligent way. So we're just starting to crack the code on the potential there. So it took a little longer than I wanted to, but felt like you needed to know that. I go in greater detail on the Saturday morning chat, but that's there. And then I owe you the file for the Pen 3.0. That thing's written in a cold start protocol, so you can drop that into any competent language model. I would always recommend using one that has access to the internet and can do searching. In the most recent international conference on AI trends, they basically said that the three commercial models that are working at the cutting edge right now, no longer Grok. It's starting to fall behind, and not the Chinese derivative models, which use output from the American commercial models to do their work. So they're waiting for the American models to come out from behind the curtain. So the three top level models right now are Google's Gemini, OpenAI, and Anthropic. And all of the other ones are really starting to just kind of fall behind. So the good news is that Notebook is being run on Gemini 3.0. And oh, by the way, uh, you need to get some long-term money in Google, in GGLL, the double leverage Google. Um, wow, is it dominating the AI space right now? So anyway, there we